From game day to signing day, breaking down every snap and all the news on Alabama's top football recruits. It's time for Crimson and Blue Chips with your host, John Garcia Jr.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in to a fresh and free edition of Crimson and Blue Chips. It is Thursday, July 26th. We've got a great show planned for you today. We are powered by Bama Online. That's, of course, a part of the 24/7 Sports Network. On today's program, we are going to continue to talk more recruiting, get to plenty of your listener questions, and bring in another first-time guest, another blue chip prospect as a first-time guest. Antonio Alfano, the top 100 defensive lineman out of New Jersey, of course, committed to the Alabama Crimson Tide, will be the bulk of our show. We had an in-depth interview with Antonio that I think you guys will enjoy. A heck of a first-time guest for CABC. So today we'll get to Antonio, and then we'll pivot to the Champions Cookout that's going down this weekend on Saturday. Sort of a Champions Cookout 2.0. Bevy of 5 stars expected, a lot of commitments expected. We'll kind of run through the updated list, which does have a little bit of attrition as of Wednesday evening. So we'll update that and then get into all of the Q&A for you right here on the audio authority for all things Alabama football and recruiting, CABC.
Making his first trip around the CABC show, if you will, Antonio Alfano, 4-star defensive lineman, top 100 overall prospect of the 24/7 Sports Composite, and of course, an Alabama Crimson Tide commitment. Antonio, first of all, thanks for joining us. How you doing this evening?
Doing real well. How are you doing?
Doing well, especially when we can get guests like you on the program. Let's just jump right into it. Obviously, hotly contested recruitment. How is it now that you've made that decision, and some time has gone by now, several weeks since making that decision? What's life like as an Alabama Crimson Tide commitment?
Well, first off, it's great, being honored to, commit to the best football program in the country. And also, all my friends, all my teammates, everyone's like, oh, the Bama commit, you're labeled as, Bama's just on your back. And like even I'd say 2 days ago, we were doing a max out in the weight room, and everyone, when I was maxing out on my squat and deadlift and bench, every time I put up like a high number, like everyone's on their phones on Snapchat, like, oh, like the Bama commit's putting up huge numbers, just like that's just what you're labeled as, like a Alabama just like player immediately. And it's been great. Just getting all the love from the players, all the fans. Every time I post them on Twitter or Instagram, all the fans are supporting me, Roll Tide, everywhere I go. So it's been real good.
Excellent. Did you expect that, I guess? Did you expect, the label and kind of the mantle, I guess, to some degree?
I guess you could say I expected it a little bit, especially because, not a lot of people from the East Coast, especially from New Jersey, go to Alabama, like that, besides, Minkah and I think Averett. So, it is rare to get someone from Jersey to go to Bama. So, I was expecting that, I guess you could say, a little bit.
Take us back to that decision. Obviously, Penn State and Georgia, I believe, were the other finalists. What separated Bama besides what you said? Hey, Bama's the #1 school, whatever. What else, helped Bama separate itself from a strong group of finalists like those two?
Well, first thing first, Josh Gaddis helped a lot with the decision. Him, me, the family, and especially me, and him being at Penn State in the beginning, we were always really close. And then him moving to Alabama really helped Alabama a lot. We went down there, and we got to see a familiar face from up in this area. It just kind of felt like, oh man, it was like a good sign. I don't know. I just got like a weird feeling when I went down there and he was there, and it just felt like almost like it was home, kind of. And then on top of that, there was just a few things that happened like that just pushed Bama over the top. I don't know if you want me to go into detail about him or.
Yeah, we got time if you got time.
All right. So I'll just give you two things. So I mean, my dad was like, I want you to sit here and think about it, because I told Dad I really like my dad. I really like Alabama a lot, like a lot, and I told him that they were leading the pack. And this was like recently, right after we came from the visit, and you're fresh off the visit, so it's fresh in your mind. So he was like, give it some time, think about it. So we gave it a couple of weeks, right? We give it my dad's sitting right here, listening to the conversation. I'm asking him. We gave it like about a month, right? Give it about a month, and I was still feeling the same way, and I had dreams of me playing in the Alabama Stadium in the uniform, like it was ridiculous, like how
literal dreams,
like literal dreams of me in on the field playing in front of the crowd, and like my family in the stands and stuff. It was like, and I woke up like, there's gotta be a sign, you know what I'm saying? And then on top of that, there was this one time my mom that I lived with, my dad's wife, Hilda, she was out with her friend, and she was out with her friend at like an outlet mall area thing, and she, how girls, they window shop or whatever, and there was like this big barrel in front of this store, and it had all these like handkerchiefs in it, like probably a couple hundred handkerchiefs, like handkerchiefs that had all types of different designs on them, everything, anything you could think of. And my mom, she sticks her hand in, and she pulls out a handkerchief, the first one she pulls out of all these other handkerchiefs in this thing, and she opens it up, and it's a big, huge thing that says Alabama on it. And it's a huge state thing. She comes home, she's like, you guys won't believe what happened to me. She tells the story, and me and my dad are like, well, I mean, that's got to mean something, like, out of everything. And just that with, always talking to the coaches every night, Coach Lupoy, Coach Gaddis, Coach Saban, Coach Kulagowski, and then just those things that were just happening just really pushed them over the edge. So
yeah, it seemed like the stars almost aligned. I want to go a little bit more in depth on Gaddis and Kulagowski, two new coaches. So Alabama fans listening to us may not be very familiar, other than, hey, they helped bring in a guy like Antonio Alfano. Gaddis in particular, you mentioned the relationship carrying over from Penn State to Alabama, but what makes him a guy who holds a strong reputation as a recruiter, or just straight up, what makes him a good recruiter who is getting credit for these type of commitments?
Definitely. So, I mean, first off, he's coming from Penn State. Penn State is dominantly recruiting the Northeast area. So you got New Jersey, all these other states up here and stuff. So everyone he was recruiting and knows him from Penn State, he's going to bring those same people down with him to Alabama. So meaning like he's going to try to get them on the Alabama like side, you know what I'm saying? Because he's coming from Penn State. And he didn't necessarily do that to me. I was aware of him going to Alabama. We still kept in contact. And, we were – my father and I were already planning a trip to go on a second Southeast tour. And, we was like, hey, let's just hit up Alabama anyway and, see it again, see how we feel. And then we hit up the coaches, and then they were like, yeah, come on down. We set up that, and then we got a little 2-day trip down there. And honestly, as a person, seeing him again and seeing how happy he was at Alabama, like, it was just welcoming, it was like it's just a familiar face down there. I am going to be far away from home, and, I feel like he's going to be someone that's going to have my back down there, definitely. And he's a really good coach. I got to see him coach. He's like how do I explain this? Everyone down there is like, I don't know, I guess it's what was Southern, I guess. And, he's the only guy, I guess, from up here that me and him could relate to about, restaurants, talking about sports teams, all that, just something that you could really, have watch your back.
Yeah, on and off the field, I gotcha. And then Kulagowski, a guy who's a bit older, been around a little bit longer, but he is new on the staff as well. And heck, you're going to be in that front seven somewhere, maybe moving around. We'll probably talk about that here in a second. But but obviously, he was going to factor in to your recruitment and potentially factor in once you actually get to Tuscaloosa. So what's he like, and what's that communication been like, maybe even since you've made the commitment?
Well, as a person, Coach Kuligowski, I think he definitely has a different style of coaching. And I've also, real quick, on a side note, I've heard from multiple different people and coaches that he's the best in the business at what he does, if not one of the best. And it's definitely a different style of coaching. He's not more of like a up your excuse my language, up your ass kind of guy. If you will, like you know what I'm saying? Not like a guy that's gonna really, get at you, get in your face, yell in your face. He's more of like he sits there and he's gonna teach you how it is, just one-on-one, and just really just trying to put his knowledge into your head. And he just explains it in a way that you just understand it. You know what I'm saying? Almost like a cool demeanor, but like his demeanor is so like relaxed that you just receive the information really well. And
very good.
And on top of that, the communication with him, it's been really, really, really good. I know he's busy coaching their players and stuff, and he's a really funny guy. If you see his like Twitter and stuff, when I was about to commit, I think like an hour before my commitment, he kind of like tweeted out some gifts, like some really funny gifts right before I was about to commit. He's a really, really good sense of humor. So I mean, just getting to play for someone like that is going to be an honor. Can't wait to get down there and learn from the best. So,
yeah, let's jump into post enrollment, whatever that is. Positionally, we actually got a question on our last podcast about not only where you may end up in college, but if Alabama would even ask your high school coach to maybe put you there if they envision a certain position. Obviously, that's a little outside the box, but it means you're a versatile guy. It means you could do different things. We see you standing up. We see you coming off the edge traditionally, hand in the dirt. Where is your comfort level right now, and where does Alabama envision you down the road?
I mean, my comfort level right now, I'm always, I think I generate the most power coming off the ball with my hand in the dirt, realistically. That's just how I'm feeling right now. I mean, it varies, whatever. I mean, I'm not going to argue with whatever the team wants me to be. I'll do. But in terms of Alabama right now, they see me as a defensive end. There were some talks about me playing the jack, outside linebacker every now and then. So I mean, I think it's just going to depend on how my body develops and grows when I get there. If I get to 300 pound plus, I'll probably be like a bigger defensive end. If I get more lean, just put on muscle, I'll probably end up playing that jack position. So I mean, it all depends on how my body's going to develop. I think when I get down there.
And where are you at right now? Just height, weight, and how do you feel heading into your senior season, which obviously is an important time?
Definitely. So right now I'm about 6'4", 280 pounds. And right now, after max outs 2 days ago, I'd say I'm strongest I've ever been for right now, and I think that no one can come close to with the athleticism wise in New Jersey to where I'm at. So I mean, I think right now I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm just ready to set some records this year.
You're clearly, one of these guys. It sounds like, at least, and correct me if I'm wrong. You sound like you want to put on for New Jersey, and you're really wanting to relish in this role of how rare it is, like you said earlier, to be a Bama guy from New Jersey. All those things. Where does that come from? Is that just a kind of a family thing? Is it a chip on your shoulder, or am I just way off base here?
I mean, I guess you could say it's kind of both. Number one, I'll hit the family part first. I mean, basically everyone in my family has grown up in Jersey, like my mom and dad's side, and even everyone I know, like my teammates are from Jersey. You just get a sense of like how proud someone would, like, just imagine, you playing on TV and you playing a national championship game and you get a sack, and your old teammates are sitting there watching that with his family. He's like, yo, like, Dad, like, remember him? I played with him. You know what I'm saying? Like, how happy and proud that would make them, that they were just a part of that. You know what I'm saying? And on top, and the other thing, the chip on your shoulder, I do feel like New Jersey is looked down upon a lot when it comes to having good athletes and having good football programs and stuff. I feel like New Jersey is kind of left in the dust when it comes to like Texas and California, because I do think that some of the teams can compete with teams of higher levels like that. So I mean, just being able to go down there and prove to everyone that Jersey produces athletes left and right, I mean, just really would make me happy. So.
Yeah, the guys you mentioned from Jersey before who ended up at Alabama, I mean, Minkah Fitzpatrick, I don't know if he could have picked up another accolade, maybe besides the Heisman Trophy. He did pretty much everything he could have done in terms of championships, All-American, all that stuff, Bednarik, Thorpe, all that. And then Anthony Averett, multi-year starter in the NFL now, again, accomplished a lot. Do you have a relationship with those guys to any degree, or are they more kind of just the examples that kind of made you feel like something like this was possible, given the circumstances you just outlined about at least the perception in your state?
Well, I didn't really have a relation. Haven't really spoken to her, but I don't think I've ever met Anthony Averett, to be honest with you. But I can tell you about Minkah. When I was in 8th grade, when I was picking which high school I wanted to attend, it was between St. Peter's Prep, Bergen Catholic, and DePaul Catholic. And in 8th grade, Minkah Fitzpatrick was a senior, and I was on a sideline for when they played Bergen Catholic on the St. Peter's side, and I was in the locker room and during the game and stuff. I remember during the game he had like 5 touchdowns or something like that, something ridiculous. He had like 5 touchdowns off of like 7 receptions, had like a pick, like something ridiculous. He was just like really just destroyed the team. And I remember at halftime he had like 2 touchdowns, and I gave him like a high five, and I was like, oh my God, like that was awesome. You know what I'm saying? Like maybe he was in high school then, and then I know he remembers me because when I went down there my first time, I saw him outside our Saban's office. He was like, oh hey, what's up? Like he gave me like, we talked for like 2 seconds and how's Jersey, whatever, and he had to go do something. So I mean, I'm familiar with Minkah, but other than that, I'm not familiar with Averett like that. But I do think that Minkah, had a chip on his shoulder about Jersey because his family went through a lot with the hurricane, and I think he wanted to definitely make his family proud by representing like that. So
Yes, certainly sounds like it. So then getting back to kind of recruiting, I guess, in general, it is 2018. It's kind of the modern era of recruiting, right? So a commitment, means a lot, but maybe not as much as it used to, at least for the most part. You see kids decommitting, flipping, et cetera. Circumstances change. The recruiting calendar has even changed, this new dead period. I mean, there's all these new curveballs. So, one, how does Antonio Alfano handle his recruitment, post-commitment, and who is still knocking on the door? Because, look, let's be honest, top 100 prospects, D linemen, everybody needs priority position guys, and you happen to be one of them. So how do you handle it, and who's still knocking on the door?
Handle it in terms of, like, how do I handle it prior to committing or
post-committing? How often are you talking to other schools? What is your message to them in terms of the communication, in terms of how you want them to continue to recruit you? Just kind of how you handle the process when school XYZ that is in Alabama, decides to pick up the phone or stop by your school or basically continue to recruit you in any way.
Well, to be honest with you, and I'd say like in the very beginning, after I committed, there was schools trying to keep in contact with me, like in the very beginning, like every now and then, like shoot me text here and there, like it's not too late to come though. Am I allowed to say the school or isn't?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I don't know if I want to put them on a map like that, but I mean, there was a few schools in the beginning, but then I kind of after that I kind of let them know, like, listen, like I'm 100% committed to Alabama. There's no changing what I'm gonna do. Like, I'm not gonna visit any other schools because to me, it's like if I'm talking to other schools, it's like I'm committed to a girl, but I'm cheating on her, kind of. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm cheating. Like that's kind of the analogy I think of it. Like Like, why would I want to commit to a school and then, talk to other schools on the side? Like, that's just not, to me, it's not right. I wouldn't go on any other official visits besides the school I'm committed to.
Yeah, well, obviously we have to ask in this climate, but we appreciate that. So being so solid to Alabama and being seemingly comfortable with that decision, are you a guy who's going to try to get back on campus a bunch? Are you a guy trying to keep up with your fellow commitments? Are you even maybe trying to recruit other guys to Bama? Kind of what's the Alfano role on that commitment list, at least at this point?
So when I'm talking about getting on campus, me and my father are definitely, and the rest of the family hopefully, are definitely going to try to go down and make a game, right? I would like to go down for the Auburn game because it is home this year. That's going to be crazy. So I mean, definitely going to try to make it down for a game, and then I think right after the season I'd take my official. Because, during the season, taking your officials during the season, it's kind of hectic with the game. You don't get time to spend time with the coaches. They're busy and stuff. So, I mean, after the season, I take my official just so I get that quality time with the coaches and players. And actually, just so you guys know, I think off topic a little bit is right now the goal date, and I'm looking like it's on pace for it, is I'm gonna graduate by the end of December and enroll in January in Alabama, so for early enrollment for spring ball of this coming up year. So I mean that's the goal right now. And recruiting other players wise, I was talking to the receiver that just committed to Bama. I think on Twitter his handle is like Mitchie _Jr. He's a receiver.
John Mitchie.
Yep. I talked to him about Bama. He asked me a few questions. He was like, "What made you pick Bama over Penn State?" All that, and then just helping him out, giving him the most knowledgeable answers, realistic answers. Because at the same time, I'm not going to be one to oh yeah, Bama all day. Of course I'm not going to say that, but I'm also going to give him the real about the other schools too. I don't want to force him to go to a school, he's not really sure about going to, you know what I'm saying? So I mean, just being real with the guys and, letting them know all the pros about Bama, just telling them what the program could do for them and yeah, so.
Very good. And kind of the last question I'll leave you here with, because you kind of set me up with the graduation one. That's important, but why do you think that's important? It's obviously a trend. It's obviously hard to do academically. You have to literally be ahead enough to graduate a semester early, but in turn you get to Alabama early and participate in an extra spring. Why is that something important to you? Why is that on your radar and something you're working towards?
Well, that's something I'm working towards because, number one, I mean, you get there in the spring for spring ball. I think as a freshman, I think that, especially in my case, in the position I'm in, they haven't recruited anyone the year prior in my position really at all, and they have two defensive linemen leaving to go to the draft this year. So I mean the spots are wide open, and I mean as a freshman coming in, being told that you can play as a freshman, I feel like spring ball is where you can show the coaches where you can play, and they think that you have a shot. And on top of that, you got ahead on your academics, you got ahead. Lifting wise, you got ahead because you're there 6 or 7 months before the other freshmen get to come in. So you're already going to be familiar with the playbook. You're going to be familiar and already acclimated to how the system works with dorming, the lifts, waking up early. So you're going to have all that under your belt before all the other freshmen come in. So you're going to be well ahead of them. It's going to be like you've already been there for like a year or so. So I mean, it just makes sense in all. So
very good. Makes a lot of sense. You don't got to sell me on it, but we appreciate the time, definitely, Antonio. Excellent interview. I thought you did a really good job. I think Bama fans are definitely going to keep their eye on you a little bit more closely now moving forward. We wish you a ton of luck and success this season, your senior year, your big-time senior year, something that is always important on anybody's calendar, independent of their recruitment, and hopefully we can catch up maybe mid-season, get an update, see how well you're doing, and bug you for another interview here on Crimson and Blue Chips.
Definitely. I can't wait. Thank you for having me.
Want to thank Antonio Alfano for joining us. As I said, kind of a lengthy interview, and really, as you can tell, between me and him kind of going back and forth, there was a lot to get to, and we probably could have gone much longer. I thought he was obviously very poised, well-spoken, and man, how about the nuggets there? Meeting Minkah Fitzpatrick in the 8th grade, looking up to him, and now he will be the first New Jersey representative on that Alabama roster since Minkah Fitzpatrick. So, the world is beautiful, and it's a small world to most of us, and I'm sure for Antonio as well. Some interesting nuggets along the way there, and clearly a versatile prospect. And we had been wondering, we had asked a lot on this podcast over the last few weeks, whether it was listener questions or us just discussing some of the highest rated guys in the class. How versatile is this guy, and where is he most comfortable? So really important for us to get those from Antonio himself, and there you have it. He kind of understands. Hey, at one point Bama was talking about stand-up linebacker, Jack, what have you, but now it's like I'm 280. He'll probably be 300 pounds at some point, and he's ready to embrace hand in the dirt football, where he says he's most explosive. So I think that is right in line with what we were kind of thinking with his projection, and why he's such an important part of this class of 2019. So thank you to Antonio for joining us there. So for the remainder of the show, as I said, we're going to pivot to the Champions Cookout 2.0 kind of briefly. We've kind of set the table for it. I believe this week in general, we know there's multiple 5 stars expected, including Pierce Quick, who was our guest on Tuesday, and several other verbal commitments from Alabama, including Jaleel Billingsley from Chicago, the tight end, another 4-star guy. I believe this was his first visit to Tuscaloosa since making that commitment. So obviously that will be big for him, and we'll see if he kind of turns into a bit of a recruiter as well. Always an interesting element with verbal commitments. So bevy of commitments coming back. A lot of the in-staters coming back. Hank South told me Wednesday night, Talia Tagovailoa expected to be back in Tuscaloosa, which I guess every time he visits, it's worthy of bringing up. Look, this is a kid who has had buzz with other programs, mainly Tennessee and LSU at different points. He continues to say he'll take visits to those schools, possibly official visits to each of those schools. So anytime that those programs have a big weekend on deck, and we know Tennessee has a cookout of their own on the same day, Saturday, July 28th, it's good for Talia to get back on campus at Alabama, just in general. It quells a little bit of that worry, and it kind of reinforces his position as one of the leaders of this Alabama recruiting class. Look, make no mistake about it. He's saying all the right things. He's solid. He's a leader, all of those things. However, the actions have said that he's looking at some other schools as well. So to get him back on campus, I think it won't be talked about a ton, I don't think, elsewhere. But for us here and for the questions we get on him, and especially his brother, I think that's big for Alabama. So a strong group of commitments expected to return to the capstone. We've gone over some of the noted uncommitted guests expected. Darnell Wright is definitely the headliner, right? 5-star, arguably top offensive tackle in the entire country. And we know Bama wants OTs to kind of round out this class, in addition to Clay Webb. I don't think I have to paint that out for you guys much anymore. I think you guys understand the importance, the priority level of a guy like Clay Webb. However, tackles from here on out are really a big part of the class, or the desired class, we should say. And Darnell Wright is really at the top of that list. He's been recruited forever by Alabama. He's been to campus multiple times. He's camped, and now he once again is coming on his own dime. And I can't stress enough how important that is. When a kid makes a visit on his own dime, it is almost the most authentic sign of interest, the most authentic sign of, hey, this school's really in it because I'm coming from freaking West Virginia down to Tuscaloosa, which is something we just never say outside of Nick Saban, I guess, right? So that has been stressed very, very clearly. The other offensive tackle to keep an eye on, as we talked about a little bit on Tuesday, and Pierce Quick talked about Evan Neal from the opening. We actually talked to Evan on Wednesday. IMG Academy had a media day, which, hey, when you're a big-time program, you can do that, and people will show up. And sure enough, 24/7 had multiple people there, including yours truly, Rivals, ESPN, local newspapers, you know, viral video folks. I mean, everybody was in there trying to get in some time with some of the IMG guys, and we were able to talk to Evan Neal. We did run into Trey Sanders. He was unavailable for comment, but first of all, sporting a new haircut, so he's going with the fade. And second, he is not going to be able to come down for the cookout, mainly because IMG has a no-visit policy for this weekend. Those guys are practicing. Remember, they're not an FHSAA school, sanctioned school, so they're not under the same rules as 99% of all the schools in Florida and in the country for that matter. So they can put on the pads a little bit sooner. They can get after it a little bit more consistently, things like that, which is part of the structure of IMG and really the appeal for a lot of kids. So those guys are practicing all weekend. So Nolan Smith, Trey Sanders, Evan Neal, De'Avi Hammond, some of these big guns on that roster going to be unable to make a visit this weekend. And Trey Sanders had previously been kind of a headliner for this Champions Cookout. So he won't be able to come. Evan Neal won't be able to come. Evan is done with visits for the summer. He's completely focused on IMG. But when we did talk to him, he did kind of paint the picture that we've been painting for a while. This is a Bama-Miami situation. Mom is certainly on Miami's side of the coin. I don't know if she's been to Tuscaloosa yet. As I think about it, we definitely should have asked that. So our bad. But it's clear that his recruitment is fairly far from being over with, and he will take official visits at some point. So I think at that point, maybe Mom gets to Tuscaloosa, and that could be Alabama's biggest hurdle, because right now they grew up Miami Hurricanes fans. They're from the state of Florida, and Mom has been thoroughly impressed with Mark Richt and company. So that might be the final hurdle for Alabama to either catch or possibly exceed Miami with perception on the trail, all of those things. So there's still a strong Bama feel here. If I were projecting a class today, I think I would have Evan in that class. I'm probably more confident on Trey Sanders than Evan at this very moment, but I think there's a solid chance both IMG guys end up at Alabama, which would be huge because both of them were once Alabama commitments. So we don't see Bama reclaiming pledges a lot in general. It's just really every school struggles with that. So to get one or both of those guys after losing them, I think would be another sign of the strength of Nick Saban and the recruiting class. But in regards to the cookout, those two will not be in attendance. But again, there's a couple of additions in 2019, 2020. I think a guy like Jeff Carter, the cornerback from Texas, is probably one worth keeping an eye on. We haven't talked about him a ton on the podcast, but we know there's more DBs to be had in this class for Alabama, and we've questioned whether or not there's a true corner in this class for Alabama. And I think when you compare Jeff Carter to Christian Williams, who is considered the corner in this class, I think Carter might fit that classic corner mold just a little bit more than Christian in terms of fluidity, consistency, hips, things like that. So I think he could be a guy maybe Bama presses for this weekend. I think it's going to be critical to see who shows up. And, of course, we urge you to stay on Bama Online, a part of the 24/7 Sports Network, to keep up with who indeed does show up for the Champions Cookout. But it's not just the class of 2019, the class of 2020 will be well represented as well. And as you could expect, multiple commitments, in-state targets, visiting. I'm not going to spend much time on these guys. I think one worth, I guess, reintroducing, if maybe we haven't talked about him here on the pod enough, is the top cornerback in the state, staying on the cornerback topic. Top cornerback in the state for 2020, Malachi Moore out of Hewitt-Trussville High School, which, look, if there's a feeder program right now for Bama, it's Hewitt-Trussville, right? You've got Pierce Quick committed. You've got quarterback Paul Tyson committed. You've got 2020 wide receiver DeZalen Warsham committed. So why not get another four-star guy and Malachi Moore on board. Not saying it's supposed to happen this weekend, but I do believe Malachi and his mother will be on campus once again. Malachi grew up a big Bama fan. He finally got that offer. He's camped for Bama. Bama's seen him work extensively when they go scout, Pierce and Paul Tyson, those guys. So he's a guy I think I would keep an eye on. I think, I don't know if Bama can match this 2019 haul in Birmingham when you talk about Tango Vailoa, Tyson, Quick, all these guys. But 2020 is going to be strong in the Birmingham area as well. Obviously, they already have Jason Jones verbally committed, and as I mentioned, Jalen Warsham already committed. So potentially Malachi Moore could join that group at some point. I'm not necessarily expecting it on Sunday or on Saturday, I should say, but it also wouldn't be the most shocking development in the world. So just something worth noting as we look at 2019 and 2020 with the Champions Cookout 2.0. So for all your updates from the Champions Cookout 2.0, keep it with Hank South, Tim Watts, and the crew over at Bama Online. Up to the minute, Bama Online, a part of the 24/7 Sports Network. Let's shift gears to Q&A as we round out the week of Crimson and Blue Chips here. We've got a lot of submissions. We're excited about that. Kind of all over the place. Another element of our kind of excitement in looking at Q&A. We've got email questions. And again, if you'd like to participate, cabcpod@gmail.com. We've got questions on social media, mainly Twitter. Everything from Jalen versus Tua to recruiting to the NFL. So these are the kind of Q&As that we really get excited for and really the foundation of the show. This is why we like to put this on. So let's jump right into your questions to round out the show and the week right here on CABC. First question is coming in via email form, coming from Dylan Britt, and he is on the quarterback chase, which is really the hottest topic maybe in all of college football, so you got to respect it. Dylan Britt emails the show. Hope all is well. Love the content lately, and thank you for that compliment there, Dylan. Keep up the good work. On the last podcast, I heard you talking about how Jalen won 26 games and won the Mississippi State game. My question is, do you think that Tua could have won all them games? And also, in my opinion, if Tua was the quarterback in the Mississippi State game, it wouldn't have even been that close. I feel like a lot of Jalen's wins came from just an overall superior team, not from a superior quarterback. I'm not trying to disrespect Jalen. The boy is a competitor, but believe he is better suited to be a goal line quarterback that can run the Wildcat. Ouch. Thanks for taking my question, Glass. Thank you for asking there, Dylan. Couple of things. If I was coming off as I was saying that Jalen, was amazing in that Mississippi State game, that was a mistake by me. I was just trying to point out that he did throw a game-winning touchdown with 30 seconds left. I just think that warrants some type of praise considering the late game scenario. And we've seen Jalen really good late in games. Whether or not he was good through most of those games, up for debate most certainly, and that Mississippi State game is included. I think that was kind of the beginning of the perceived downfall of Jalen Hurts relative to the temptation of Tua, if that makes sense. However, there's been a lot of clutch efforts and moments from Jalen that I just think almost get overlooked. It's like people forget what he contributed. Sure, was he a vital cog in all 26 of those wins? Probably not. Look, you didn't need anybody against Mercer and Vandy and some of these lesser teams like that. I don't think anybody needs to go in depth on that. But there's something to be said for clutch performances. Both his games against LSU, by air and by land, he was big. Maybe more so with his legs, but again, there's just a clutchness there. People always remember A.J. McCarron to T.J. Yeldon on the screen to beat LSU, but nobody said, "Oh, A.J. only made a 5-yard pass on that play," and they kind of gave him crap for it. I just think there's something to be said for clutch moments, period. No matter when they come, no matter how they come, and no matter who produces them and how they are produced. So throwing a post, I believe it was a post or a seam route to Devontae Smith with 30 seconds left, I just think is important in the makeup and the pros of Jalen, because you've seen clutch moments. That last drive against Clemson in the national championship defeat, where he goes down with his arm, with his legs, fourth down conversions, all of those things in the biggest possible stage, and he's a freaking true freshman. Again, the LSU game that year, the LSU game in 2017 as well. I'm just saying there are moments, and those are four moments that are really as big as it gets. Staving off an upset against Mississippi State, beating rival LSU at your place and at their place, and the freaking Natty. I mean, those are four of the, what, 6 or 7 biggest games he played in. You throw in the 2 Auburn games and a couple semifinals. So in half of the biggest games Jalen played in, he made a very critical play late in the game. And I'm talking 2 minutes or less to go in the game. And I just think that alone is something that, compared to Tua, he's dominant. Tua has the play, obviously, right, to win a natty, a walk-off. But if that's play 1, plays 2, 3, 4, and 5 all go to Jalen in terms of clutch, big moment, big stage efforts. That's really all I was trying to illustrate there. Now, could Tua have won all of those games? Probably. Again, we don't know because Jalen went out and did it. We just hadn't seen it from Tua yet. It's just a known. In terms of skill set, if he understood Lane Kiffin's playbook 2 years ago and Brian Dable's playbook throughout 2017, yeah, I guess he could have. But again, in those same scenarios, in those same moments, there's zero way to know. Could he have made that throw to Devontae Smith? On talent, yes. But again, in that moment, we don't know. We don't have that example. Those 2 big runs against LSU, we don't have that example. And obviously, that the last drive of the national championship, Jalen's freshman year, we don't have that example from Tua. Is he an athlete? Yes. Does he have a great arm? Of course. But there's like a, when the moment is big and the lights are brightest, the talent, it's almost a notch or 2 below just the execution of simplicity and just getting through things as if they are normal. And we have more examples of Jalen doing that than Tua. It's just a fact. It doesn't mean Jalen's the favorite or anything like that. And I think Tua could have won most of those games, but there's really no way to know in those games that really could have went one way or the other how Tua would have done, because we've only seen him in a clutch situation once in his collegiate life. That's my only point there. But again, if you don't have Tua, do you win the Natty? This past year, probably not. And that might be the de facto trump card for this entire conversation. I'm not incredibly sure, but certainly a good question. But that's where I'm at with it. Sure, Bama's team is superior. That whole Bama is just a superior team. Isn't that true every game? I mean, literally look at the recruiting rankings. Bama won 7 straight recruiting titles before last year. So literally every time they step on the field, they are the more talented team, and they should win, which is why they've been favored for like 100 games in a row or whatever crazy number it is. So you really could make that argument regardless of the quarterback at Alabama, which was once a reason why quarterbacks at Alabama weren't considered a big deal when you went back to the Greg McElroys and John Parker Wilsons and A.J. McCarron, even to some degrees of the world. There were elements and points there where people said, yeah, who cares who the quarterback is? Look who they got around him. And I think that still holds true in general. So making that a con for Jalen, I don't think makes sense, because that's true of every quarterback who's played at Alabama under Nick Saban, because technically that roster is far superior and more talented than even that Ohio State team that beat Bama, the Auburn team that beat Bama, the Georgia team in the national championship, the LSU teams they've faced. You can literally go down the list, and I don't think Bama's been the underdog at any point during this run, at least none that I can remember at this moment. But certainly a good question in from Dylan, and we appreciate that. A couple of questions on the Twitter sphere, if you will. Raphael Monroy, I missed this question last week, and he asked it again. We appreciate that, and we encourage that. He tweets in, hope all is well. Who do you think will be named captains? The 3 at Media Day seem like good candidates. If Daxton Hill commits to the Tide, will he be the best safety recruit in the Saban era? Woo! Loaded second question from Raphael. Let me hit the first one first. Who will be named captains? Well, if there wasn't a quarterback battle, I think Jalen Hurts would have been a strong candidate. But y'all think I'm the president of the Jalen Hurts fan club, so let me just stop talking about him. I think the quarterback battle will prevent one of those guys from being captain in all likelihood. So you go to other positions, and you mentioned the guys who were there for media day. I think Damian Harris is a pretty safe bet. A lot of people thought he could have went to the NFL and been extremely successful, and he decided to come back. He's a senior. He's the leader. All of those things. I think that makes it fairly clear that he could be a captain. Certainly a lineman would make sense here. Ross Pierschbaker is kind of the same guy as Damian Harris in terms of longevity, experience, all of that. And like you said, Raphael, he was also at SEC Media Days, so he could be that senior anchor. And heck, he's the center, right? So he should be the captain of the offensive line. So why not another captain of the offense? And then defensively, I think it's kind of up in the air. I think you could see several guys emerge. Obviously we're not there every day in practice and all that, and you've seen some leadership council, teases by Alabama on social media, and you've seen guys like Raekwon Davis and Mack Wilson and Quinnen Williams, and several guys at these specific events, if you will. So I think any of those guys are a candidate. So if we're going with three captains, I think Harris, Pierschbaker, and one defensive guy. I'd say between Raekwon Davis, Mack Wilson, Deontay Thompson's an upperclassman. He's expected to start. He wouldn't shock me to be a captain. Maybe Isaiah Buggs as the elder statesman. I don't know, how rowdy he is and how much he deals with leadership. I don't know that to be true. So one of those guys, I think, could be a captain. I'll say the best defensive player, so I'll go Raekwon Davis. I'll say just the guy who's the best rises to the occasion, and he's the captain. So I'll go with Raekwon Davis, but I wouldn't be surprised if any of those guys were the captain. So my pick is Damian Harris, Ross Pierschbaker, and Raekwon Davis as the representatives for Alabama. Maybe Christian Miller. Christian Miller's been around a long time too, so he's one that I think is worthy of being in that conversation. But a very good question in to Crimson and Blue Chips. We appreciate that, Raphael. He did it using the hashtag CABC. The rest of these come from simply tweeting the show at CABC Pod. Oh, I'm sorry, Raphael. I didn't answer the back half of your question. Would Daxton Hill be the top safety in the Saban era? Man, that's just hard for me. When you think of HaHa Clinton Dix, Landon Collins, even Eddie Jackson, I still think Eddie Jackson was underappreciated at Alabama, and even since he's left Alabama. And do you consider Minkah Fitzpatrick a safety? If you do, there's your number one. Battle for number two, tough between Collins and HaHa. I think HaHa's more of an overall safety. So no matter how you go with that, 2 and 2A, I guess, 2A and 2B. So to say Daxton Hill, even on talent, would be the top safety is tough for me. Now, is he the fastest safety that Nick would have brought in? I think that answers yes, actually. I think he'd beat those guys in a foot race. I think Minkah would be the closest to him, but I think he would edge him out at this point from what we see. Wouldn't be a big gap or anything, but to say he would be the best it's just hard for me just because of the elite guys who have come through under Nick Saban. So I think he has a chance. He would have a chance, I should say. But to call it now, I'm not ready for that. But the fact that he would even be in the conversation in respect, I think tells you the type of talent he is, and it's why he's a 5-star, and it's why he's the number one seed in the country in this class of 2019. More questions coming in. Again, these are via CABC Pod on Twitter. Rick Schnell chiming in on the quarterback situation, referencing Tuesday's show. Interesting discussion on Jalen and Tua. In the end, do you think Bama could win the Natty with Jalen Hurts this year? You need to beat Auburn, Georgia, 2 playoff games. So, yeah, Rick, that's a good question, and that's probably the most important question. I mean, the very basic determination of who you start at any position is who gives you the best chance to win a game. Could that change game to game and all that? I don't know. Nick on ESPN referenced playing 2 quarterbacks, something Kirk McNair brought to this show months ago. And I think that's something that's still very much possible. Um, can Jalen Hurts win the national championship this year? I need to know how much he's progressed as a passer. I'm not worried about his maturity, demeanor, leadership, running ability, ball security, any of those things, those are big check marks if we're talking about quarterbacks. But again, y'all think I'm pumping him up for no reason, so I'll leave it there. I think what the favorable part of this whole thing is the schedule. Louisville is not a great team as far as we know at this point. However, they're probably the best team Alabama will face for the first month plus of the season. Texas A&M, unknown. Arkansas, not a lot of talent, but still fairly unknown. Ole Miss, rebuilding offensive firepower, defense is terrible. There's a pretty clear path to a lot of victories, I think, regardless of who the quarterback is during the regular season. But when you get to LSU, when you get to Auburn, then you're talking about, potential roadblocks. Obviously, Auburn was a clear roadblock last year, and arguably Jalen's worst performance. So at that point, do you feel confident in his progression as a passer? Because again, a lot of these other things in terms of the intangibles are kind of secure with Jalen. Still unknown with Tua, secure with Jalen. So the biggest separator between the two remains that arm and the consistency. Can Jalen close that gap in between now and LSU? He's got plenty of time to do it, but can he show it in practice and in camp and prove it to Nick and to Josh Gaddis and to Dan Enos and most importantly maybe to Mike Locksley? I don't know. I don't know that answer. Do I think he could do it? Sure. I mean, you give the kid the benefit of the doubt, don't you? Although this fan base does not give him any benefit of the doubt, which baffles me. But maybe we should. But again, what's to say that Tua doesn't close the gap on the items where Jalen has the clear advantage at this point? Maybe 9 games in, Tua does have a ton of experience to close that gap. Maybe he has shown much more leadership to close that gap. Maybe his demeanor, which his demeanor is already good, but now in game situations you have more examples of great demeanor. And he proves that, athletically there's not a huge gap, although most anyone would consider Jalen the more athletic, more poised runner. And maybe Tua doesn't turn the ball over as much as I think he might. So maybe Tua, in the meantime, can close the gaps on the items where Jalen has that clear advantage at this point. So it might not matter if Jalen's progressed with his arm, but Tua's progressed everywhere else. You got to go with Tua. So the schedule breeds the possibility of 2 quarterbacks, and it breeds the possibility of trial and error for Alabama, and that's very advantageous to Nick Saban and company. So I think they take advantage of it for at least the first few games, if not longer. And you just kind of pick and prod a 2 quarterback system. And that doesn't mean 50-50, 60-40, 70-30, depending on the situation, depending on the game. And look, these guys are both athletic. They're both going to take hits. So, one could get banged up. So there's so many factors that go into the thing. But could Jalen do it if he progresses in that most critical area? Yes. But Tua could progress at the same time, so it may not matter. So that's the beauty of this battle, and I think why it's so compelling, and again, why I think it's a legitimate battle, despite the foregone conclusion from the folks in Vegas, from the casual Alabama fan, and from most everyone. It might, again, Tua's the favorite, but it's not 99% to 1 that it's his battle. So it's going to be compelling, I think, pretty much no matter what, Rick, but we appreciate you chiming in. Carl Lenzner back to the table with a question. Good afternoon, John. With the injury to Terrell Lewis, what kind of role do you see for Jerez Parks? Interesting question there. Jerez is new to the game, new to the program. I think all of that is fairly clear. But you talk about a guy who's waited his turn and should be as motivated as any. I mean, the dude had to take an entire year off. So we know we always wondered when he was in high school, and we would talk about his ability. Big cat, right? 250, 6'4", whatever. We always wondered, was he going to be a guy who put on weight and had his hand in the dirt, or a guy who stayed in that 250, 260 range and possibly, had some stand-up ability? Well, he has stayed in that 250 to 260 range. So he could stay in that stand-up linebacker role, potentially, Jack, and be in the running to replace a guy like Terrell Lewis. Remember, you've got Anthony Jennings, you've got Christian Miller, veterans on the outside, Jamie Mosley, veteran on the outside, but you've got some young guys, Jerez Parks, Ayabi Anoma, LeBron Ray, maybe if he stands up, who can do some things. Although actually LeBron Ray keeps gaining weight. We saw he's like 294 now. He's going to be in that hand in the dirt rotation. So I think there's not a very clear path to playing for Jerez Parks, but given the rotations that typically go down on a Nick Saban defense, especially early in the season, the chance for him to get some type of run is certainly there, and you're literally one step closer with Terrell Lewis out, because that was going to be a starter and an impact player and a guy who probably was going to have enough tape to go to the NFL. So literally he is one step closer, but there's still several veterans with a lot of experience in front of him and guys who are just as talented, if not more talented, in that freshman and sophomore year class. But a good question there. I think Parks is definitely not a guy to forget about in the conversation of depth. More from Carl. Over under 50%. Does Alabama land Ishmael Sopsher? Same question for Nakobe Dean. Ooh. Important recruits there for Alabama, Carl. A couple of 5-stars, a couple of out-of-state 5-stars in enemy territory. I think Sopsher less likely than Dean right now. I think Dean is such a priority, and he's really the guy at that inside linebacker position. I think when you go to defensive tackle, you've got Texas A&M commit Leal as a heavy option, Fatui Tuitele out of Hawaii as a heavy option, Siaki Ika as a heavy option, and Ishmael Sopsher as a heavy option. So if you miss on the top guy, which is Sopsher, you still have room to salvage it with a good dude. With Nakobe Dean, if you miss on him, there is a clear drop and a big drop until the next guy can potentially fill that role. So I think he's the more important recruit. And this was even before the injury to, the departure of Vandarius Cowan, the injury to Terrell Lewis and that linebacker core. This was before that. Look, the inside linebacker group is a smaller one. This is way before Keith Holcomb, pretty much made it seem like he's not coming back. He was already that important, talking about Dean. So now he's that much more important to pair with Shane Lee on the commitment list. This group of linebackers is thin, and there could be more movement. Dylan Moses could be going into his last year next year. Mack Wilson could be about to begin his final year if he plays his cards right. So there's just not a lot there in terms of experience and potential returning players when you look at 2019 and beyond. By 2020, Moses, Wilson, all these guys, Holcomb's already gone, could be gone. So you need to hit a home run at inside linebacker in this class if you're Alabama, period. So he's more important than Sopsher, in my opinion. So he is the more likely guy, simply because Alabama doesn't miss on those guys. I think Georgia, major competition. A&M, major competition for Dean, for Sopsher. Look, man, you got to beat LSU. And Bama's had major victories against LSU in that state, but it looks like LSU is starting to fight back, and this class is going to be tough in Louisiana. Doesn't mean Bama's not going to do it. Doesn't mean they can't do it. But Devontae Lee looking more like a Tiger guy. Christian Harris, coin flip. And these guys were almost not locks to Alabama, but certainly Bama was the favorite for each of those guys. Tyrion Davis, the LSU commitment, actually visiting Bama for the Champions Cookout. Probably should have mentioned him earlier. But he's committed to Baton Rouge and LSU, and he's from Baton Rouge, I should say. Tough to pull. I don't think Bama's gonna flip him. So LSU is going to be tough in Louisiana this cycle, period. They've got the number one player in the state committed in Derek Stingley, and number two is Sopsher, and they feel good right now, even though it's going to be a long-term battle. That is a December, January, February battle for both schools. So I just think there's more speed bumps in the way with Sopsher, and it's not just those two programs. Miami's in it. Texas A&M's in it. There's a lot of other schools in it for Sopsher, so keep an eye on them as well. So over under 50%, I would give the over to Dean, the under to Sopsher. But good questions coming in from Carl Lenzner. We always appreciate his participation. Finally, we'll go to Luke Ferguson here for the final question of the week on CABC. He tweets the show. Do we agree there are only 3 offensive tackle players we think are ready? I think offensive guard is wide open. Don't sleep on Josh Casher or Deontay Brown. Source, A-Day. Yeah, that was really our last look, right, Luke? So we do have to look at that. And look, I think this is why we talk about this being the most talented line that Nick Saban has had. There are upperclassmen or guys who have been in the program multiple years who aren't even the favorites at their positions, but you think, man, if this guy was at Texas A&M or LSU or Tennessee or Kentucky, they'd be starters and maybe captains. That's what you get with depth. And there's legitimately 10 guys who, based on talent and or experience, could play this year, and it shouldn't shock you. You know what? Let's try to name them. You know, obviously, Jonah Williams, Matt Womack, the starting tackles from last year, Lester Cotton, Ross Piercebaker, Alex Leatherwood, Jedrick Wills, Deontay Brown, Josh Casher, Richie Pettibone. You know, he's been in the program several years. What about freshman center Emil Ekiyor? You know, a guy that nobody's talking about, but, you know, at one point we said, Bama needs to land this cat because he might be a starter early during his time in Tuscaloosa. There is a bevy of strong interior prospects, and both combined with experience. Chris Owens is another one, I think, better than people think at this point. O-line is not an issue for Alabama. It's just a matter of how in the world do you figure out how to get these 5 guys on the field together. But when you're talking about offensive tackle, I think it's 3 to 4 guys. Obviously, Jonah Williams, Matt Womack, clearly. Alex Leatherwood, clearly. But I think Jedrick Wills is in that conversation as a tackle as well, especially considering the amount of strong interior guys that we just named. There are more interior than exterior guys. So I think Wills is a combo dude, could play guard, could play tackle. But if you go to it with a classic depth chart, and let's say it's the same guys from last year, Jonah, Matt Womack as your edge guys. Your theoretical backups, if you're not playing duplicates, would be Alex Leatherwood and Jedrick Wills. If one of them isn't sliding inside, which is something I would do, but I digress. So I think he has tackle ability, and there were times where he came in before Leatherwood last year when they were both true freshmen. So I think that's certainly warranted facts in this conversation. But I think 3 to 4 offensive tackles for sure. Many more interior guys, 4 to 6 to 7. So it's a great O-line situation. It's a great problem to have for Brent Key. And like I said, really the hardest thing is determining who in the world can we move to get the 5 most talented linemen on the field. But other guys have a lot of experience and age on their side. So that's going to be really compelling. We know Ross Piercebaker pretty much locked in at center. We know Jonah Williams pretty much locked in at one of the tackle spots, and that's all we know. Cotton probably one of the guard spots, but, you know, what if you kick inside Alex Leatherwood and Jedrick Wills, and you mentioned Casher? Deontay Brown is a big old body. I mean, what do you do? What do you do with those other guard spots? So it's going to be fascinating to see. And just like we talked about with quarterback a little bit earlier, hey, you have the schedule to experiment. So I'm not saying you throw out a different lineman every time, but look back to the first month of the season. So that means post-fall camp to see which battles weren't yet decided. Could be quarterback, could be O-line. Heck, the secondary is all sorts of new. I mean, there could be like 10 battles here that extend beyond fall camp. So if Bama is able to figure it out and win a championship, I think we'll look to that first month of the season. And the games might not be incredibly entertaining, but those battles will still be sorted out and sorting out during that first month. And I think that is very important if Bama's able to rally and go back to back. So keep an eye on the O-line battle. Absolutely. Going into fall camp, and my prediction is beyond fall camp as well. But that'll do it for today's podcast. Extremely excited to put it on for you. We appreciate you guys listening and participating. It's why we do what we do. Thank you to Antonio Alfano. Thank you to the listeners. And we'll see you next week, and we'll see how this Champions Cookout 2.0 goes. Could commitment number 21 be in for the top-ranked Crimson Tide? We shall see. God bless. Garcia out.